get started. And because it's just you and me, we can just chat and we can, interject. I've just got what I've done. I'm actually experimenting. I've never used the whiteboards on Zoom before. So I thought I'd experiment. And I've just got kind of some headings and topics, and we can kind of explore those things from here.
Yes.
But if you have any clarification, you have, any additional questions, just jump right in, because, make it easy.
Well, so you'll know I'll be getting a puppy in March.
Oh, that's exciting.
Ridgeback.
Okay.
So I'll be signing up for some of your classes.
Perfect. That's awesome. Okay. So, and do you want me to read your question out loud, just so everyone...
No, I remember it.
Do you remember? Okay. Well,
basically.
Maybe I'll just to kind of clarify what it is for other people. So it says, would you go over the order of training from new arrival to trained service dog, please? I'd also appreciate explanations for why it's important to go in sequence. Thank you. And John, yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So, let me find out where I had this all organized and planned, so I knew where everything was. Now, of course, I can't find, where's the whiteboards? There's whiteboards. Okay. Click on my whiteboard.
Yes, it's up.
Okay, so you can see it now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so, and then one more thing, I need to move this and click that on. Okay, so it's a qualitative approach to self-training your service dog. What are you missing? And I came up with that title because I find a lot of people think that it's only about obedience. And of course, it's so much more than that. There's the whole big picture, and I'm all about big picture. So let me. Okay, so when we start, some really basic stuff, we have to have a diagnosed disability. Now, whether you have a prescription for it or not varies depending on where you are. Some jurisdictions do require it, some don't. In British Columbia, if you want to get your dog certified, for example, you have to have a note, or you have your doctor fill in a form saying that you have a disability and he recommends a service dog to mitigate it. Here
in the States, we only need letters for housing now.
Exactly, yeah. And well, transport as well now. The Transportation Canada Act, if you want to fly or take the train, you have to have a letter from a doctor as well. So I'm not sure if that applies in the States for your Transportation Act, but yeah.
No, our Air Carrier Access Act, you have to do a self-attestation, which no trainer can do, saying that the dog is trained. And then if any segment of the flight goes over 8 hours, then you have to do a relief form also saying your dog can hold it that long. Okay, perfect. Okay, and then beyond that, obviously you need a puppy or a dog that you're starting with. And I always recommend get the best possible dog you can that's, best suited to your lifestyle, but that's a whole discussion. So I'm just going to assume that these three things are in place if they need to be. And then we'll dive forward here. Okay, so we have your puppy or dog, and we start with that stage of life. So we know that most people, when they get a puppy or dog, the puppies are typically about 8 to 9 weeks in that window, depending on the breeders. You can start with an adolescent dog, also an adult dog. It depends where they are in training, what kind of background, what kind of socialization. But I'm going to assume you've got a dog with a good temperament. And the key thing, if you're starting with a puppy, is you want the dog to learn to be a dog. That's number one. They have to know how to be a dog. We also want to socialize them and socialize to people, to other animals, and then provide environmental enrichment as well. So basically letting them explore the world, learning it on their own terms, and learning that there's nothing to be scared of. And that's a big thing that often happens, is people will push their dogs into situations rather than let the dog go into situation. And there's a fundamental difference. We know that with children, for example, same thing. If the kids get pushed in, then they often won't deal as well as if their parent is a secure base and they just let them explore and go from there. Yes.
So that's a key thing a lot of people miss. There's actually recent research on the secure attachment theory as well that applies to dogs specifically, that also applied to kids. And what they found is that dogs with secure attachment, i.e. they let the dogs explore at their own pace, and they had appropriate reactions from the parents, or parental role in this case, they found that it was shortened adolescence. Sometimes adolescence wouldn't even appear. Puberty was a lot later, And there's also a lot less conflict during adolescence.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So it's quite fundamental to the whole bigger picture of how we raise dogs and how we interact with our dogs. So a lot of times what historically people complain, oh, I've got this dog and he's being stubborn and he's trying to set up conflict with me and he's always a challenge. And that's often because of the way that they've been raised. A lot of conflict in the raising results in conflict in the relationship. So,
yes.
Yeah.
And I also noticed that it's adding to the nurture aspect, not nature and nurture.
Yeah.
And nature has a major component, but it's saying nurture does too.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the nurture part of it is helping the dog be functional in a functional environment,
right,
rather than being dysfunctional. I mean, when I grew up, we were pushing dogs' noses into their pee and poop when they made house. That's not helping the dog understand what you want. That's punishing them after the fact, right?
Yep.
So yeah, so that's just an example of that. The other thing you want to do is we want them to be comfortable in all of the environments that they're going to be working as an adult. So if, for example, you have a specific workplace, definitely take them to the workplace for very short periods of time, but expose them to it when they're younger and continually until they're ready to go to work, just so that it's just another environment that they're normally in. It's not a novel situation that they have to, oh my God, what's going on? It's just, another place that I go with my dad, right?
Yep.
So that's key. Have a variety of reinforcers: food, toys, play, social interaction. And those can be used, of course, not only for training, but also just everyday life. And that's part of the bonding, right?
Yes.
But a lot of people will get stuck on just one. They'll just focus on food, or they'll just focus on the social interaction. So having that array is really important, because we can use different reinforcers for different things. For example, I use massage a lot in situations where I don't want my dogs to get excited about food. I've had 2 chow hounds. And if, when I present food, it's like, whoa, what are we doing? And they get that high arousal. Well, I don't want that when they're settling. I don't want that when they're greeting people. So I tend to use other things like massage or soothing talking to them that helps to just keep them calm. And they kind of go, oh, I'm doing a good thing. This is good. Rather than, oh, I'm doing a good thing. Right. So that's really want to emphasize that calm situation for some behaviors. Obviously, some we want them to up and at them and away we go. Those are the ones that I use a lot of food for. If I want distance, or I want enthusiasm, I want speed, then I'll use a lot of food, and we'll, different ways of making that more exciting as well.
Right. I find a lot of people tend to rely on praise much more than it's worth.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and they don't condition it either, right? While it means something to them, it doesn't often mean what they think it does to the dog.
Exactly.
Yeah. So the dog's kind of like, yeah. And they think it's, oh, what a wonderful dog. Right. And it's like, yeah, it does. I don't think it means that to your dog. You can tell by the response.
Yeah. But oh, what a wonderful dog. And they're saying, oh, what a wonderful dog. You did great.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Even the tone makes a difference.
Exactly.
Yeah. Perfect. Okay. The other things that we want to prepare puppies right from the time they're young are being alone for short periods of time. That's a common mistake. I find a lot of people, especially people that live alone, and I get it, it's hard, but we really want to have time where the dog is learning to be a dog and learning that it's okay for him to be alone, because there will be times in the future when he's going to have to be alone, and we don't want that to be stressful for him.
That's right.
Handling by strangers is another biggie. So, and not in a, what was, they used to have that game where pass the puppy, I think it was, everybody would sit in a circle and you pass the puppy. I don't do that. No. But it is about, calm handling, interaction, because the puppy needs to be handled by groomers and veterinarians. Yes. And I mean, maybe even a stranger might need to take the leash at some point down the road if something's happened to you and an EMT starts working on you.
Exactly.
So we want the dog to be comfortable with all these, what are normally outside our normal situations. They're kind of anomalies, but we just wanted to make it normal. Everything's a normal situation. No big deal. Here you go. Here's the leash. Go with this person, not a biggie.
Somebody outside our family.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Having outside family members, puppy sitting. I actually will send my puppies out to friends and neighbors, even if they're with a dog buddy that they play with. At least, you're starting that process. And it's all these little tiny pieces where you start getting, and then later on it's, oh yeah, we can build it. Now the dog can go to that friend, maybe their dog's away, or maybe their dog comes over to my house. And, so we're just changing things up gradually so that we're gradually building that oh, you're going to stay with them, no big deal. You know, hey, I get to go see Auntie Joanne, right?
Yep.
As
Yeah, in my
opposed to,
case, my
ooh,
breeder
yeah.
is local. So
Oh,
that's
perfect.
a great resource.
That's fantastic. Yeah, and a lot of times, like, and I will. Well, if I didn't have Lucy, I'd be doing dog boarding. I've got a couple clients who I'd be happy to do dog boarding for them when they're traveling. You know, if they can't go because the dog's not certified yet, for example. I'm
Yep.
happy to take the dog for a week or whatever, just to as a boarding situation. And I mean, I can train it while it's here as well. So,
Right.
but I think the biggest thing that a lot of people miss is really conditioning the calmness.
Yes, I have a
Yeah.
problem with, I don't really know how to do that.
Well, it's about capturing when the dog
Yeah.
is calm. So you start with periods of time. So if you find a certain time of day your dog is napping, that's when
Hmm.
you go by and you give them a nice little neck massage and say, "Oh, aren't you an awesome dog?" Because what
Okay.
happens then is we can use that as a tool. When they are excited, we go up and we go, "Oh, aren't you an awesome dog?" Then they go, "Oh, yeah, I was calm last time. I felt that. I guess I need to calm down."
Yeah. That
So it's a
makes it.
lot of those little things about capturing. You know, your dog is on the bed when you're in the kitchen making food. "Oh, aren't you an awesome dog?" Slip a little treat or give him a little neck massage.
Yeah, that makes
Coming in
sense.
doorways is a biggie. Lots of people enjoy
Mhm.
that excitement. Yay, my dog home, my dog. But what they
Yep.
don't realize is that they're actually conditioning the excitement. So if we just and I say ignore, and I don't mean in a like deliberately kind of ignore, make it so it doesn't look like it's deliberate. Pretend you're coming
Right.
in the door and putting things away. You're putting your groceries away. You're putting your books down. You're taking your clothing off, and you're ignoring your dog just because you're busy and focused on something else.
Right.
That gives your puppy and your dog time to calm down, so that when you do turn to them and reinforce it, you're reinforcing calm rather than reinforcing the excitement.
Right. Something I learned many years ago now was to ignore the dog for the first 5 minutes.
Yeah,
No,
yeah. And I mean, like I
let
said,
you
it's
get
not
in,
like
do your
it's
things.
it's not like you're turning away from them and you know, it's, "Oh, I'm sorry, but I'm busy," right? So it doesn't
Yep.
seem like it's a snub, right? Because
Right.
that's a really strong communication, which can disconnect bonds as well. So it has to be
Yes.
done in an appropriate way for sure.
Yeah. And if the dog calms in less than 5 minutes, that's just gravy.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing is start looking at your exercise habits right when they're young. A
Yep.
lot of sniffing is calming. Try and avoid the
Hmm.
ball tossing, especially with those ball launchers. If you
Oh, I
have
don't do
to
that.
do, if you have to do some sort of exercise like that, say you're laid up or something, I'd much rather throw a bumper than a ball,
Yeah.
because the balls just keep rolling and that gets an adrenaline hit every time you throw it. So if your dog gets 50 adrenaline hits in a day, it doesn't
Ooh.
take long before you have an adrenaline junkie.
Yeah.
So we want to try and do longer exercise. In the case of puppies, not very long, but as the dog
Right.
gets into adolescence, it's not, 3 hours of running. It's let's go for an hour hike. And for most dogs, even high energy dogs, that's a sufficient level of exercise where it's steady exercise.
Hmm.
Swimming is good because it's a steady exercise. It's cardiovascular, it's the whole muscles. But anything that's steady, I used to run my other dogs beside a bicycle. If people are in
Yeah.
a wheelchair or a scooter, they can do that. Obviously, watching the dog's responses, making sure they're not getting overheated. But having long, sustained exercise is much, much better than that start and stop, start and stop, start and stop.
Right.
That starts right from a puppy.
Well,
People
speaking
fall
of
into that trap.
exercise, on the exercise, I'm looking at canine conditioning and body awareness.
Yes, that kind of comes a little bit later. You can certainly start it with real simple stuff as a puppy. That
Hmm.
comes into as in adolescence, which we'll talk about right now, actually.
Okay.
So let's move on to the next picture. Um, okay. Oops. Okay, so the next thing is the dog becomes a family member. So we got a puppy first, family member second, and family member is kind of when they're in adolescence. That's kind
Okay.
of the key focus.
I don't have a different slide.
Oh, you don't?
No,
Hmm.
just the first one.
Okay. Because mine says 4.
No, I'm still on one.
Yours is on 1. Oh,
Yes.
well, that's strange. I'm glad you pointed that out. Sorry, mine's whirring, so I'm just waiting.
Oh.
Yeah, my end, I'm actually on slide 4. That's really odd.
Oh.
Did that change it?
No.
No, it still didn't, hey? I wonder if I can refresh somehow. That's really strange. Yeah, this is the first time I've actually used it. So I was playing around with it
Yeah.
last night. Yeah, it doesn't look like there's anywhere I can refresh it. Here, I'll go back to 1.
Okay.
And then let's see if it'll take me to, let's see, 2. Did that change it?
No.
3.
No.
No, because these are all numbered. 4. Okay, I'm not sure what I'm doing wrong here. It says you're collaborating on the whiteboard. Here, let me actually try something else. I'm gonna close the whiteboard.
Okay.
I'll reopen it and see if that will change it. Now, where's the whiteboard again?
I hope you don't have to open each page and then share it.
No,
That would
no,
be
I'll
cumbersome.
go to my old whiteboard. Okay, I'm gonna click this one. I'm gonna go participants can view. Okay, open and collaborate. Okay, so can you see it again?
Yes.
Okay, so
Page 1.
let's see if it moves to 2. Did it change that time?
No.
Huh. Strange. Okay, I'm not gonna know how to fix that in our time that we've got. So I'll just keep
Right.
moving forward and I'll edit this piece out anyway.
Okay.
But
Well,
at
you
least,
might want to take the whiteboard off then.
yeah. Yeah, because all you're seeing is just the front.
Yes.
Okay, I'll close the whiteboard and it'll just be me then. Okay,
Yes.
that is fine. That works just great. Okay, so learning to be a functional family member is the next step. So that's where adolescence comes into play, and that's where, depending again when you get your dog, some people get it in adulthood, but that's okay. So in adolescence, you really want to have confidence in the family structure. So the relationships in the family. I know a lot of people are by themselves, but there are nuclear families where you've got larger families, which is great. Where the dog understands his role as far as he's a family member, he's a participant, he has choices, and but he also has to understand that other people have choices too. So it's that give and take kind of thing that they have to learn. We want to build the curiosity and willing to take risks in learning and in life. Now, some dogs are obviously more naturally inclined towards that. Some are more risk takers than others. And that's where the ones that aren't risk takers, we want to build the confidence. And those that are, we kind of want to calm them down so that they kind of look back to the handler to go, is this okay if I make a choice now? And make it really clear to them. Like, for example, in a training session, I have a real clear, we're going to train. Usually I actually ask the dog, I go, hey, do you want to play? And that usually means we're going to have a training session. And then at the end of the training session, I tell them, okay, we're all done. And that's really clear. So for those dogs, it's a nice on-off switch. So they clearly understand I'm available. You can throw whatever you want at me that fits the parameters. And I might click it, I might not. But then when I'm done, and you get to go lay down and I get to go do my computer thing or whatever else I'm doing. And that's a piece that some people miss because they inadvertently will reinforce that. They'll be sitting at the watching the TV and the dog comes over with the ball and they end up throwing the ball, not thinking about what they're doing while they're watching TV. And you don't want to get into those kind of scenarios. Right. Because that really reinforces, hey, I can start training anytime I want to. And it's like, no, with a service dog, we really need to have that calm on-off switch where they start looking at the context and saying, it's time for me to work or it's time for me to rest. Because those are the two big pieces. Right. Do you see a need to vest, unvest now for training sessions or working? Actually, no, I don't generally recommend it unless you're working in public and there's a reason to put it on. Like, because I do a lot of my training in dog-friendly places. I go to like Home Depot and Rona and that kind of stuff. And there's pet dogs in there. And most people in those environments don't run up and pet your dog unless they ask. They're really good. Right. But if you go to a pet store, however, big box pet stores, I do not use because it's chaos. It's the hardest environment for any dog. So in general, it's the best place to have your dog to be traumatized, in my opinion, because there's just so many uncontrolled. There's urine on the floor. There's kids running around corners unpredicted. There's sometimes dogs dragging leashes. It's just, it's a recipe for disaster. So to me, that's like university end if and when you ever get to that point, because it is a risky place to be in those big boxes. Plus, there's treats and toys right down there, nose level. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So those kind of big pictures, but it really is about that relationship and the environments that cue the behavior. If you walk into a theater and the dog sees everybody sitting down, oh, I guess that means that we're going to be sitting down. We're not going to be getting up and doing something, right? Unless you're the demonstrator, then you get up, you do your thing,
Right.
and then you flop down. But, in general, we want the environment to really cue the behavior. So if you're sitting watching TV, your dog should be flopped on a bed beside you and be able to
Yeah.
relax, rather than trying to get you to engage with him, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but in that context, we want to condition it so that the expectation is we can choose when and when and if the dog gets to do excessive interaction with us, right?
Right.
Yeah, we just don't want that demand where they come over and they rest their chin and they're like, come on, come on, come on, I want to do something. It's like, no, sorry, I'm busy. I'm on the phone, right? Mom's on the
Right.
phone. You go lay down and let's be quiet. You'll wait your
Right.
turn and you can talk to me afterwards. And I mean, we
Yep.
want to meet those needs, certainly, but the dogs have to understand the context within that. And that's part of that family environment, right?
Right. That's just like a child.
Exactly. Yeah. And there's a lot of parallels between raising a service dog
Mhm.
and raising a child, or any dog, actually. Okay, so yeah, so make sure you're really reinforcing base behaviors like settle and walking on a loose leash, and working on those wherever you go. Generalize, 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 because those are the two foundation behaviors for all service dogs. Body awareness, as you mentioned, physical development, so things like wobble boards and cavalates and obstacle courses, jumping, whatever works to strengthen the dog's body, and awareness of how to move in space. That all comes into adolescence. Some of them are going to be like a bull in a china shop. Some of them are going to be more refined, right, naturally, but we want to shape that into what's more appropriate as a service dog, for sure.
Right.
Continuing the bonding to the handler's secure attachment, spending more time alone, being taken away from the handler, even just somebody taking the leash, leading them away and coming them back, and just building that as normal. If you've got two people in the family, you're walking along, it's not just about one person only walking the dog, because you're going to need help at some point. We all do, whether we're healthy or not. And so we want to be able to hand the leash off, and will the dog willingly go with that person for the walk around the block when you cut your walk short and go home, right?
Yeah.
You don't want the dog leaning going, wait, mom's back there, I can't go, right? You want
Right.
that ability. And then eventually we will extend that to strangers as well. Just trusting that whoever's got the leash, I follow the leash and just go with them. They may or may not know the cues that I know. They may or may not know my name, but I will just follow them because they have the leash. That's all kind of built up.
Okay.
And of course, using the appropriate building blocks of exercise and food for the dog at that level. I find people underestimate the importance of food in helping a dog be calm, because the different foods do make a huge difference. There's still a lot of corn-based foods that vets are recommending on the market, and I do not recommend that at all. That's a really poor quality food for a dog. We want to have decent quality, because we have dogs, they may not be working at this point, but they still need to be healthy. They're in developmental stages. So we want
a working dog needs to be a peak performer.
Yeah, well, yeah. Not an over peak though. We also don't want to go the other end and feed them a high octane plain fuel, because we don't want an airplane, right? So we have to find something that fits for the balance of the family and the exercise needs and mental needs. Does the dog need to be on all the time? That dog's going to need more quality food. Whereas if a dog is lazing around most of the day and only, maybe once or twice a day performing tasks, it's not going to need the same level of energy, right?
Right.
So making sure that we're matching those kinds of things. Okay, the next step is learning how to be a functional member of the community. So we've got family, the home, kind of the yard, and then we start expanding. And while that does happen during adolescence, we really focus on it once they hit kind of that area where we start working on public access. So we really wanted them to continue to learn how to learn. We don't really have to worry specifically about what behaviors they learn other than settle and loose leash walking, because honestly, it doesn't really matter. The public access tests that eventually people like to put their dogs through, whether it's optional or not, they're not actually testing for the specific behaviors, even though that's what it looks like. And even though that's what people train to, that's not what the testers are looking for. The testers are looking for the relationship. They're looking for, is the dog safe in public? They're looking for the owner's awareness of the dog's needs and ability to respond appropriately to it. And they're also looking for the handler's knowledge of their rights and responsibilities as a service dog handler. So those are the big things. They just use the small things as a way of measuring it.
Right.
But so many people get hung up on the details. Well, can my dog sit and stay? And it's like, it really isn't about that. I mean, yes, we want to have the dog to be able to respond to that level, but the focus should be, rather than on the details, it should be on the bigger picture. You know, is my dog responding when I ask him to respond? Is he willing, or is he fearful? Is he hesitant? That's more what we want to be looking at. And if we can have a dog that's comfortable and calm, we're laughing. Like that's your way ahead of the game. And then any obedience trained dog that's like robotic, or, you know, feeling you have to do it because there's punishment coming.
Obedience requires commands.
Exactly. Yeah, we use cues.
Yep.
We use cues.
There's a difference.
Okay. Continuing to learn concepts like generalization, ignoring distractions, building resiliency. Those are big picture items again. Being able to be away overnight from your handler. Again, more being taken away from your handler. In this piece, I usually, you still there? Oops.
Yes, I'm
Sorry,
here.
my screen popped up, my email open. I hate when that does it. Okay, you also, being in small spaces is what I usually start working with when the dog is just around 16, 17, 18 months. Being in small spaces, backing up, those kind of skills. And they, by then, will have the body awareness to do that and do it quickly and easily. Whereas at a younger age, it can be more difficult for them.
Yep.
And again, environmentally neutral. We want them to be curious, but not fearful, and not engage in the environment. So just, you know, being able to lay and watch the world pass by. You know, is there a child running, chasing a ball? Is there a squirrel running up a tree? Just being quite passive about the environment, being aware of it, because that's an important piece of being a service dog, because they may need to respond to it, but not being reactive to it.
Right. Look at that, or engage, disengage.
Yeah, exactly. And even doing that just as a default. You know, the dog is looking and going, oh, there's a child running. What do you think of that, Mom? Nothing. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. At 18 months is usually when I recommend starting with service dog task training, for a number of reasons. Dogs are not physically mature, most of them, until that age. They may not be emotionally or socially mature either. So in the case of emotional support, we don't want to expose the dogs to anxiety, for example, until that age, because we know that they do pick it up and they do become sensitive as part of their, so we want to wait till they're fully developed before we expose them. So they then have the coping strategies to be able to handle it, rather than thinking that, you know, anxiety is normal and okay, we'll just ignore it, or they follow the handler into the anxiety, which we don't want either. So that's usually why we wait until that 8-month period. We can start public access preparation at home, start building the behaviors. And that's one of my classes does that specifically. We use your countertop, for example, to pretend to be a checkout. You know, so you can start teaching what is the process, what is the pattern that they're going to see in the store before we take it to the store.
Yeah.
And then we can generalize it, you know, neighbors and other places that are a little bit less formal than an actual store. So
well, you can even be setting that up when you're unpacking your groceries.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I do that at home first as well, just to get them the idea of, you know, duration and waiting, and okay, this is part of the process. So we can, generalize that. Preparation for the public access test. And as I said earlier, it's a way of assessing the teamwork rather than actually looking at the specific behaviors. Generalizing tasks to different locations. I mean, again, we've already started it, but we're expanding it even further into more public places. And at this age, depending, once the tasks are trained, we're using actual public access. And then if you want to go for the actual certification, if it's needed or required or desired, however you want to. So that's kind of the big picture of getting to the point of a service dog. Now, a couple other pieces that people often miss or forget is the maintenance part. You know, it's not all done. Once you're done, it's done. No, it's not, because just like us, dogs are always learning. Our needs change. So there's new tasks that might need to be changed. The environment changes. So the dog might need to be accustomed to new changes in the environment. The dog is still maturing. A lot of dogs will still continue to mature. Some breeds up to 4 and 5 years of age. Socially, physically, usually they're done by then, but so certainly emotionally. And again, it depends on the foundation that they've started with, how quickly they mature, how much support they've had. So if they haven't had it, then you're kind of playing catch up in this stage, and more bonding as a team, is working through that and bonding as a team. So that's a really important piece. And that's that's basically lifelong up until you hit the last phase, which is the retirement phase, where the dog is phased out of process. And it might be a gradual change, it might be a sudden change, depending on the reason for retirement. If the dog has a health issue that stops them, then it might have to be a sudden retirement. Whether you've got a replacement coming in or whatever that's going to look like is a different question. But you'll have to look at specifically what that's going to look like for the dog and help the dog adjust to that. Because just like with people, retirement takes an adjustment. I know it took my dad about 5 years to truly adjust to going from working full-time, working nights, to I have all this time on my own. What do I do with
What do I do with it?
And now he's home all the time, and he's under mom's foot because mom was always at home. So now we've got that relationship. So there's all these changes that happen during retirement. So that it definitely is a phase. It's not just one and done and away you go. And for some dogs, if they're midlife and they have to be for health or whatever other reason, it can be quite a shock for them and quite an adjustment.
Yes, I can see that. I never thought about planning retirement as part of the hierarchy of training a dog.
Yep. Well, and again, if they're conditioned to be calm, then when you do phase them out, it's easier, right? Rather than if they go from highly active to calm, it's okay, that would be a huge transition for them.
Right. And also the separation anxiety. If they're used to being alone or seeing other things happen, they'll be more resilient.
Yep, exactly. And that's what it is. It's all about building that resiliency in the dog. And I'm glad you brought that up, because that's exactly one of my points is resiliency. We really want the dogs to be able to adapt to changes, to observe what's going on and just kind of, whatever, no big deal. We can do this.
Yeah.
Right. And that's
roll with the punches.
Yeah. And the biggest compliment we can receive with a service dog is that, oh, I didn't even know there was a dog here.
Yes.
And I recently had one of my clients tell me that, or one of my students who was flying, and of course they knew the dog was on the plane. But at the end, the stewardesses were like, oh, I completely forgot that your dog was even here.
Yeah. So
she took that as a huge compliment.
Definitely.
Yeah. So a couple of things that are kind of final notes. What we're looking for overall is a well-conditioned, socially functional dog with appropriate energy levels for your family life and the work that you're asking him to do. So it's better to have a calm dog, a dog with a calm temperament and have a few simple behaviors that's willing to engage but let the environment pass by, than have a dog with a ton of behaviors that's always on the go. That's really hard to calm down and relax.
Right.
So if we can aim for that overall picture of calm dog, chill out, respond to the environment appropriately, that's really our biggest goal.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah. So if the dog has the time to socially, emotionally, and physically mature, and he has those to function in social, emotional, and physical environments, you're going to be way far ahead of the game. And keeping in mind that different individuals take longer and there's no rushing that process.
Right. No, that's some of its breed characteristics, some of it's just the individual dog.
Yeah, exactly. So that kind of brings us to the end of our session. And I just want to make sure I finish before we get cut off. So we do have some programs that you mentioned earlier that you can sign up for that will help you through those steps. I do take a big picture. I look at concepts. So teaching dogs a concept, which is a broader picture. They still get the individual skills, but they learn the concept. So the learning happens faster once they understand the concepts.
Right. That's much better.
Yeah. And then also there's some, I address common challenges that come up in those concepts. So things like in classical conditioning, we talk about the look at that game, which is a really helpful tool. Or in the capturing, we talk about acclimation, giving the dog time to acclimate, but then capturing the desirable behaviors. So those are kind of built into the program. And then the other piece I wanted to make sure is that this chat that we just had will be archived in the library. So if you want to know and want to see other ones that we do and also access the library, consider subscribing to that.
Yep.
And this one will be available for a week publicly before it goes private. So if you want to rewatch it, you can, certainly.
Okay.
Yeah. So did that answer your question?
Yes, ma'am. It certainly did. And brought up some new points for me to remember and what order to do things in.
Fantastic. Well, thank
not
you.
trying to skip steps.
Yeah, that's perfect. Fantastic. I really appreciate you attending, John, and I look forward. Hopefully you'll attend another one.
Yes, I will.
Okay, and keep asking your questions. That's awesome.
Okay.